So welcome. I would say good morning, but I think it's afternoon where most of y'all are. This is my first webinar, so y'all gonna have to bear with me. I'm used to a hot room full of people, so hopefully I don't talk too loud or too fast. I gave this presentation or a form of it back in May, I believe, in Pennsylvania, and I think I sufficiently scared a room full of people enough that they wanted me to do this on a larger scale to try to scare all of you. So hopefully we can scare you enough to let you know that this is a real thing that is going on. I've actually had agents. Was targeted myself as an agent with a couple of these things, and I've had agents targeted since I've taken over this role. So this stuff is real, and the AI is expanding at a rate that we really can't fathom. And I've got a little video at the end. It's unnerving how fast this stuff is progressing. So first of all, let's take a look. Why is our industry targeted so much? It's pretty obvious. We move a whole lot of money, and we deal with a lot of valuable property and real estate. And then one thing a lot of us don't think about, because we're so focused on the money, is that we have a ton of NPI at our disposal and inside our computer systems. With every transaction that we do, we have copies of people's IDs, we have their social security numbers, we have their banking information. So if anybody can get into your system, that is a treasure trove for any kind of fraudster, whether it be traditional fraud or AI-backed fraud. And increasingly, we are under a lot of pressure. I don't know how many of you, I know as an agent myself, the real estate agents and the lenders are under pressure from their buyers. And so we don't get 30-day closes a lot anymore. We didn't. We would get contracts with 10 and 15-day close dates. So, and when that pressure comes, you tend to sort of relax and you're not as diligent as you should be. Also, we're relying more on digital resources. We're uploading documents digitally, recording documents digitally. I used to go to the courthouse 3 or 4 times a week to record documents. And now that's done minutes after closing through an electronic system with PDF scans, and anytime you introduce technology, you introduce another avenue for someone to come in and create some kind of fraud. And then we're also a pretty high trust environment. Attorneys, especially attorneys, they think we know everything. We know the truth that we don't, but they tend to trust us. So you have a lot of bankers involved, but people trust bankers. They trust their real estate agents as professionals. So people, when they have professionals involved, think that those professionals are looking out for them, so they let their guard down. So we are really, really one of the industries that is targeted by a lot of this financial fraud the most. Looking at fraud now, when I first started this about 15 years ago, we had a lot of fraud. We had no AI. There was no such thing as AI. But we did still get fraudulent emails. We'd have our traditional email compromise, which is someone gets in and actually hacks your email. We had the phishing scams. That was the Nigerian prince email that if you send me your money, now, then I'll send you 10 times that amount of money a week from now. Keyloggers and malware existed back then, and they still do. You would get an email and you click on it and get something downloaded on your computer. Traditional wire fraud, that's people coming in with documents, bringing you fake wiring instructions. Seller impersonation, typical of how we used to go get into bars when we were kids, when we weren't supposed to. And I think the statute of limitations has passed on that. So I think I can talk about that now. That was the guy at your high school that used to be able to split the ID and change the number and put the covering back on there. And then traditionally forged documents, which did happen, but you would have to have a lot of parties in on it. A lot of times the notaries would have to be in on it because you'd have to try to get that notary stamp when you needed it. Now, AI threats, they do, and we'll look at all this in depth, but you're going to have more enhanced phishing scams and email attacks, something called social engineering attacks, which attacks that we'll look at in a little bit. Data scraping is huge, and a lot of people don't realize that it happens. That's looking at online sources, including social media, and pulling people's information to make these attacks more realistic. AI-generated documents. They can generate fake documents now, including IDs that you cannot, as a human being, tell that they're fake. Sometimes the technology can't even tell that they're fake. The scariest one, and the thing everybody wants to know more about, are the deepfake videos and the voice cloning that they can do. I'm going to have some videos for y'all to watch in here. Hopefully we can get through most of them in a limited amount of time that we have, but I think, no one likes to watch videos in the middle of a presentation like this, but I think you have to, so that it can drive home the reality of what's going on. So looking at some of these more traditional fraud attacks a little bit more in depth, looking at the business email compromise, which still occurs all the time. This is your email getting hacked, like we were talking about earlier before. And they're going to come in, they're going to hack your email, and then they're going to use your email to email someone else to get them to do something. They can copy your logos, your signatures, your headshots that are in your emails, all your privacy notices. So this is going to look like a legitimate email. But I remember when I was an agent, this happened to us. We got an email that was supposed to be from the real estate agent. They were trying to change wiring instructions. It looked like at the top of the email, all the email programs give a nickname to the person who's emailing you. The nickname was the same. The only way we figured it out was we hovered over the email, and you could tell one character in the domain was wrong. And so that's how they were able to catch that. Business email compromise is still probably the primary mode of attack for this, but it may be surpassed pretty soon by some of the AI generated documents. We'll look at that in a little bit. As we said, real estate's a prime target. Some of the things that they can do to get into your emails are things like keyloggers and malware. And this is when you get an email from it looks like it's from your lender, or it's from someone faxing you a payoff statement. It's got a PDF attached, or it's got a link where it says click here to log into the portal. But when you click on that, it's going to download one of these programs to your computer, like one of these keyloggers, which what that'll do is goes in, and when you go into your legitimate website and type in your credentials, it's going to map that. So now they know, and it's going to send it to them. So now they know all of your login credentials and your passwords, and then they can come in behind you and get into all your systems and online banking and things like that. Be careful of those emails especially, but also USB drives that people give you with their documents on them, and anything you download. Like I said, including PDF documents is a big one right now. You do have your virus software, your Windows Defender on your computer, and that's going to catch some of that. But remember, they're coming in behind it and fixing the problem. They don't know about that particular software until after that problem's already occurred. Once they find out about it, they do an update, and then now they can block that one, and then the hacker makes another one. So it is important, though, to make sure that you have all of those updates continually downloaded and you stay up to date with that. Malware, it's software that's going to mess up your computer, steal your stuff. That usually can result in ransomware, which we've all heard about. That's where they lock up all your files, and then you get an email or a message saying, if you want your files back, you have to pay us X number of dollars, or we'll destroy them, or we'll leak them to the public, or whatever threat they want to do. Traditional data scraping, social engineering, and phishing. We all know what phishing is. Phishing, again, is that email you get from the foreign guy in Africa that says he's locked up all his money and he wants to, or Romania, and he wants you to send him $1,000, and then he'll, send you $10,000 later. The problem is they will now look through data scraping, which is the pulling of data off of government websites, off of your social media accounts, and off of anything like Zillow or Realtor.com. They can get the addresses of the property. They can get the owner's names of the property. They can get your name. They can get your credentials. So all of this stuff looks real. They can pull pictures of you and pictures of the participants in the transaction off of their social media to create email signatures that look legitimate. And then social engineering is when they're just trying to manipulate you into doing something with one of these scams. So they take a lot of that data off through this data scraping, create these emails, and then they send these phishing emails to you, but they don't look like the phishing emails of old. And so you just have to be really, really diligent about getting these types of emails and verify any email that you get that may seem a little bit off. And I mean, trust your instincts too, because a lot of times you'll read something that doesn't sound like the person that's supposed to be emailing you. So just make sure that you're very diligent about that and understand that is going on. Also, there were fraudulent checks and check washing. Fraudulent checks have been around forever and they're not going anywhere. The thing that I found interesting was actually understand how I always heard check washing. And so now I understand how they do it. What they do a lot of times is they'll take these checks and they'll get them out of the mailbox. They'll get them, and a lot of times, most of the time it's out of traditional mailbox. But they can't. I've seen them break into FedEx boxes and they'll get that out of there. They'll take that check and they'll take tape and they'll put tape over the signature on the front and then put tape over the signature on the back. They'll put it in a shallow pan, put acetone in it. The acetone eats away all of the ink that was not used to make the check. So all of the information that you filled in on the check, but the printer's ink is still there. They take that out. They dry it in a book so that it dries flat. Then they pull the tape off and it saves your signature on the check. Then they go back in, put it back through the computer, or they handwrite and change the information on it, and then they cash the check. And it's actually a viable check with a viable signature. So point there, never use mailbox. Always track your checks when you send them out. Don't just mail them, especially if they're large amounts. And they do say that gel pens are easier or harder for them to get the ink out than a traditional ink pen. So wire fraud is and always has been a big issue. Like I said, they tried to get my agency to do that with the check that we got. They sent a copy of a check and said, you need to wire it to this email. So you just need to be diligent about this. And when they normally do it is towards the end of the transaction when everyone's up in arms because are we going to close on time? Have we gotten the lender's package? The buyer or the seller needs their money to buy something else or to pay off something, and they have to have it by this day, and they'll create this false sense of urgency. So when they send it to you from someone you think you drop your guard and you don't check into these things like you should. They can even call you now, and we'll kind of look at how they do that through voice cloning and some other AI tools that they use to do that, and then verify them with you. And it's not a call from someone who's obviously fake like it used to be. One of the things I have seen is the wire overage issue. So they'll either wire or they'll bring you a fake check for a certain amount of money. A lot of times it's they'll send you the fake check for over what they need, and then they'll want it back. Or they'll try to ACH you, which you should have an ACH block on your accounts, by the way, because some of these banks tell their customers that they're wiring the money and they're not wiring the money. They're using an ACH. So they'll send it to you and then they'll request that you send it back. I sent you too much by mistake, or the deal is not going to close now, and they want you to send it back. And then all of a sudden you send it back, and then either the check comes back bad or they recall the ACH and then you're out the money. Never change wiring instructions, period. But if you ever have to, never do it through email. What I did when I was still doing closings is if you came into the office and you filled out your wire form in front of me or another notary, then we could wire it to you. But if you called and wanted to change it, you were getting a check. So, you have to use your best judgment on that. And there are some technologies we're going to look at towards the end that can help you try to verify some of that. But really, you should just not change wiring instructions at all. Always verify wiring information, but always do it from an independently sourced number. Never use the number that was given to you. And then if you find out or suspect that this may have happened, you have to act immediately, because if you don't, that money will be gone. Traditional seller impersonation, fake IDs and forged documents. We kind of talked about this a little bit before. I kind of got off on it in an earlier slide, but seller impersonation is when someone comes in and essentially says they are the seller and they're not. One thing that happened to a local title company years ago was husband and wife were getting a divorce. And this was before any kind of AI. The husband and wife were getting a divorce, and the husband brought his girlfriend to closing with a fake ID that made it appear that she was the wife. So they came to closing, signed all the documents. They wrote the check to him. He requested check be written to him. Check was written to him. They ran off with the money, and no one found out about it for quite some time when the wife realized that the house had been sold. So I'm sure that still happens, but we're going to look at in a little bit how AI is making seller impersonation fraud so hard to catch that it's scary. And they'll look at certain, and we'll look at this too in just a few minutes, but they'll look at certain high risk transactions like vacant properties or elderly people, where it makes it a little bit easier for them to pull this off. And then they'll also pressure you to do it quickly, and it's usually a cash buyer, cash sale. And then most of the time they won't be as bold as the guy with his girlfriend, and they'll want to do this through some kind of power of attorney, or they'll want to do it remotely if your state really does that in practice. They can do these fake IDs with printers, and they have software that can help them replicate some of the things, but it's getting harder for them to do because of the cutouts that some states have on their driver's licenses, and in the holograms also. But that's where the AI is going to make it much easier. So we'll look at that in just a little bit. Again, high-risk transactions and transaction flags, non-owner occupied properties. It's vacant land, second homes, rental or investor properties, and then they'll actually look at obituaries and find, and they'll take, it's old school data scraping. They're looking up the obituaries, they're cross-referencing the obituaries with the tax records, and they find this house where this deceased person has recently died, and they set up one of these transactions because they know that it's much more likely to be successful. They can also tell from the public record if that person has a mortgage on their property. If they don't, then it's likely that that whole property is going to be cash, or that whole cash purchase price is going to go to them as proceeds. It's also strange if you see anything that's got a recent, on your title search, that has a recent conveyance, just a transfer deed or a quit claim deed, or a donation or something like that, you should be very skeptical of that as well. Also, when they come in and they're just trying to sell it quick, so they don't mind that they're taking a bath on it, that's a red flag too. Obviously, cash only transactions, when they don't want to show up in person and your contact with them has been largely by phone or email, and then their address doesn't match what you find on the tax records. So that said, to kind of combat some of that, one thing you can do is, if you are super skeptical, you can send a notification letter to the property owner to the address on the tax roll. Now, we realize that that's not feasible in a lot of situations to send that by mail. So if you're super skeptical, you may have to do that in some way that you can track it, or you may have to use a 2-day or an overnight. But even if it costs you $20, $25 to do that, it's worth it to verify that you're not making a mistake here. If the owner does call you back and you do that, cancel everything immediately and make sure you tell us. I mean, I know that can be embarrassing, but make sure you tell us about that, because we need to know that somebody's made that attempt to do that to you. Okay, so now that's kind of traditional fraud landscape, and we are seeing a lot of that still. But I think what you all really want to see is what AI can do. And, AI kind of takes some of the things that have been traditionally used and amplifies them, but it also has created a whole new level of the ability for someone to attempt to commit fraud. The documents are almost indistinguishable. They can actually create videos and voice recordings of actual individuals that and present those to you. So even verifying it over emails become impossible, or email or video rather is become impossible to do, or almost impossible. All of the phishing and the data scraping that they're doing is on steroids now because they don't have to do it in person. So we kind of went over what data scraping was. So I'm kind of going to go through this a little faster to try to make up time. The issue with AI and data scraping is they can use scraper programs or bots to do this. So whereas you and I would have to physically go into Google, search for obituaries, and I'm sitting in Bossier Parish, Louisiana right now. So you search for obituaries in Bossier Parish, Louisiana over the past 30 days, put the people's names in, and then we would have to go to the government website and put each person's name in to try to see if they had any property. They can use bots to do that in seconds. So they can go through the entire website before you and I could do one of them. And that makes their job a whole lot easier because they can go out and target these things at hundreds of people at one time. And again, what they're looking at is they are looking at county or parish records, which are all online. All your tax records are online. A lot of those tax records, some of them are even free and they're not behind an account wall. So I can actually see the transaction history of a property. It'll give me the legal description, or at least a truncated legal description, enough that I could try to fake a deed with it. And it would give me the name, what the person paid for it previously, and it would give me their name. So all that information is there. What it's listing for now, all that stuff is on the MLS listings, the agent that has it listed. So I can email you as that agent, and I can go to that agent's social media and get their picture and all their contact information to create this email. And then and if I wanted to fake a document, I could go to the Louisiana Secretary of State's website right now and pull all of my own notary information or the information of any other notary and create a fake notary stamp so that I could give you a power of attorney. So the main thing people don't realize is their social media. I think the agents post everything on their social media, and it is so easy to get that data. Social engineering, again, social engineering is trying to manipulate people into doing things for you using the technology. And so one thing that they can do is they can use all this data, as I was saying, to make these attacks very personal. So they look very real. And when you see that, and it's the same email signature that the agent uses, and it's the same, it looks to be the same email that it came from, there's just not that much reason for you to question it. And so you tend to just drop your guard and let it go. Business email phishing. Again, the issue here is that it used to take people a long time to do this type of fraud. They used to have to go in, do the research, craft the emails. You just send the emails out to email lists that they created, MailChimp or something else. You don't do that now. You use bots to do it. And it could be that you're on Instagram or you're on Facebook and you interact with a bot that you don't realize is an actual bot. Well, then it pulls your email, and that's how these email lists get created. So then they take these email lists and they blast this entire email out to a bunch of people. And so the likelihood of somebody biting is a whole lot greater. Wire fraud. And then that's the same thing with the business email compromise. What they're doing is monitoring your email. And so they can go in and embed something in your email where they're watching your email and your conversation about this deal. So they know exactly when to send you this email with these fraudulent wiring instructions in them, which we're going to see in a minute, can be completely recreated to look exactly like the legitimate wiring instructions that you just got from that same lender on the other deal. And the information matches exactly, except for the account number and the routing number for who you're going to wire this money to, which is not them. It used to take a lot of sophistication to do things like this also. Now it can be done with one guy with a laptop in his mom's basement. And so it's no longer just these big industries over in Romania and Ukraine and places like that, that where this stuff is notoriously located, it is legitimate single actors with a laptop here in the United States doing it. AI generated fraudulent documents. Fraudulent documents, like we said, have been around a long time. But the way that AI can do this, they can make these documents look almost impossible to detect that they're forgeries. The notary stamps look real. The credentials in the notary stamps look real. The fake signatures look real. The documents don't look pixelated anymore. The margins look correct. I'll show you one in a minute that I created with one prompt for a Pennsylvania deed, and everything on the document is fake. Now, some of it's obviously fake because I didn't put in a legal description and all of that, but at first glance, it looks real. So how many people would take that as a PDF and then scan it and record it in their recording system, and no one's going to be able to find it? One thing, and even Ron is susceptible to this. Now, Ron's getting some of the Ron systems. We don't use that a lot in Louisiana, but some of them are getting a little better at detecting it, and they've got some fraud detection stuff built into them now, some AI detection stuff, but it's not foolproof. And it has been, we'll see in just a little bit, it has been beaten before. Always cross-check your notaries if you get a notarized document from somebody. And then we'll look at some stuff that we can provide to you, service called IntelliCheck, that we're going to start offering or have started offering, that can help you verify some of these wiring instructions. So as I mentioned, both of those documents were created with one prompt on AI. The signatures on the deed on the right, I know they're fake, so I can kind of tell, but the more prompts, you'll notice I left it this way because the ones on the left actually look correct. The ones on the right look a little too perfect. Of course, the ones on the left are boys, and our handwriting tends to be worse anyway. And that's actually what I told it. And so it made those signatures worse. But you'll see it's got the recording information at the top. It's got everything that you need to be able to record it. And you could actually scan that and put it through. You'll notice our friend there with the Pennsylvania driver's license. It's got the hologram. It's got the, I'm searching for my words now, the little gold star, so you think you can fly, the Real ID Act. It's got that. It's got the signature below the picture, but you'll also notice that that is John Wick. That's Keanu Reeves. I would know it was fake, but I probably would not stop John Wick because I don't want to get into that. The big thing y'all all want to see are deepfakes. Deepfakes are AI generated videos and audio that look and sound like real people. There are a couple different kinds of deepfakes. When they first started, they were really easy to spot because they couldn't respond to you. A lot of them were video loops. Their movements were jerky. Their fingers didn't look right. Their teeth didn't look right. But you're going to see that in the span of less than 2 years, that type of thing is disappearing. Also, when you see someone that you know well, like a celebrity or someone that you personally know, you might still be able to tell the difference. But if you're looking at somebody's ID and then you're looking at a video of them, I got 3 old driver's licenses in my sock drawer at the house, and it looks like 3 different people. So it's going to be much harder to spot when you're not intimately familiar with someone. So there's 2 different types of deepfakes. There are fully synthetic deepfakes, which are deepfake videos and audio that seem to be real human beings, but there are no real human beings involved at all. These are done through generative AI, and a lot of times what they'll do is they'll take 2 AIs and they'll have one create it, and then they'll tell one to tell them what's wrong with it. And the 2 AIs will argue back and forth. And I'm simplifying this. This is way more complex than what I'm making it sound like. But they'll argue back and forth until it becomes perfect. So this video was created almost 3 years ago, 4 years ago, and some of you may have seen it. So I'm going to play a little bit of this. just so you can kind of see. I probably won't go through the whole thing.
I am not Morgan Freeman, and what you see is not real. Well, at least in contemporary terms, it is not. What if I were to tell you that I am not even a human being? Would you believe me? What is your perception of reality? Is it the ability to capture, process, and make sense of the information our senses receive? If you can see, hear, taste, or smell something, does that make it real? Or is it simply the ability to feel?
Okay, so that was obviously not Morgan Freeman, but it looked and sounded just like him. And like I said, that video was over 3 years old, and it's about a minute long. Back then, it was hard for them to create things over a minute long, but now they can. Also, back then, he couldn't respond to me if you asked him a question. But we're going to see in a little bit that they're quickly changing their ability to do that. There's one more here. This is a famous account on Instagram. It tends to be a little bit loud, so I apologize for the volume.
Yeah, I'll be right there, Steve. Hey, what's up, TikTok? Look, I do a lot of my own stunts, but I also do a lot of industrial cleanup, okay? It's important. So, obviously, you keep your hands clean, but you need that exfoliating product to really cut through the grime, okay? Just another tip for you talkers, or the tip.
Okay. And that was also not Tom Cruise. I hope this is not jerky when y'all are watching it. I'm looking at my screen over here on the left, and the video seems a little bit jerky. So hopefully that's coming through okay. So those are actual fully deep fakes. And in that Tom Cruise example, nothing behind him was real. None of the audio was real. The clanking and clanging, all of that was created through AI, and that whole video was produced by AI. So not only was he not real, none of his surroundings were either. The second type of deep fake is face swap technology. And I know probably some of you have seen examples of this. This is a news story from last year. So this technology has become way better now. So what they do is they sit a live person in front of you, and then they play this program that takes that live person's face and makes them look like someone else. The difference here is those people can actually respond to you, and they are much harder to detect. So I'm going to play a little bit of this to see if y'all can kind of get the feel for what this is, but I probably, again, won't go through it all for the sake of time.
CBS News California Investigates has been uncovering fraud, from identity thefts involving Uber drivers to fake businesses set up to take out bank loans and credit cards. It's estimated that 50% of scams like these now involve AI tools like deepfakes.
Oh, as it turns out, the technology is making it easier and easier for scammers to take advantage of their victims. Consumer investigator Christine Lazar got an eye-opening crash course on how they're doing it. This was shocking to see.
Yeah, and it's not often that I'm surprised because I'm inundated with scams, but when I see this kind of thing, I think, how are we going to protect our loved ones from these scams? So we used to tell people, if you're concerned that you're communicating with a scammer or someone catfishing you, ask to do a video chat. Well, what happens when those scammers can morph into anyone they want to be over video, and the ease with which they can do it is shocking.
Artificial intelligence is perhaps one of the greatest tools we have when it comes to gathering information. Turns out, it's also become the tool of choice for scammers to steal your identity and your money.
AI-generated fraud is going to be the biggest growth industry of all time.
This is Soups Ranjan, CEO of fraud prevention company Sardine.
It is really easy nowadays to create a deepfake video of someone else.
It's something you have to see to believe.
This is pretty convincing.
That's me, as none other than Taylor Swift.
I mean, it has the mouth right. We have similar hair color. Would you believe this? I mean, it's pretty good.
Soups and his chief of staff, Matt Vega, showed us how easily scammers can utilize AI technology to become whomever they want to be. In this case, they used an app they downloaded.
Okay, so as y'all can see, Ted and I laughed about that because he swears she did not look like Taylor Swift. And I agree, she doesn't look like Taylor Swift does now, but she did not look like herself. But it goes back to what I was saying. That technology is from, that story is from last year, and the technology has progressed in a startling rate since last year. And it is true, if you're going to try to mimic a face that we all know, then it's hard. You have to use someone who bears resemblance to that person. If you don't, it's probably not going to work well. But again, you're not going to be looking at that when you're looking at doing a video chat with somebody. You're going to be looking at somebody that the only time you've ever seen them is a picture on a driver's license. And my driver's license right now from 3 years ago looks nothing like me. So all they have to do is look similar, and then you wouldn't be able to tell that it wasn't them. So the other thing besides video is AI voice cloning. And I mentioned earlier how they were able to verify. So they'll send you a wiring instruction, and then you call them. And if you don't call an independently sourced number, or they call you, you might not actually be talking to who you think you're talking to. Voice cloning, they did it. The latest study I could find was 2024. And Starling Bank. Starling Bank's one of those banks like Chime, but it's sort of the UK version where they don't have physical branches. They're kind of an online bank. They did a study of all their customers in the UK, and they said almost 30% of people have been targeted by an AI voice scam, but only half of people know that it's actually a thing. And what people don't realize is it takes only 3 seconds of your voice or someone else's voice for them to be able to create a program that will say in your voice or someone else's voice anything they want it to say. So what they do is they type it in. They clone the voice. They type in different responses. They create what we as old gamers used to call hotkeys. So I can create keys on my keyboard that if I hit it, it will say a certain thing in that voice, so that I can carry on a conversation with you with just my computer keyboard in real time. And because of those hotkeys, there's very little, if any, pause. And so you're not dealing with, used to you would call and it would sound like the accent wouldn't be right, or, they would take too much time to try to answer you, like they were fumbling for information. That doesn't happen anymore. But where do they get the cloning is the scary part. One way they get it is all of those calls you get on your phone, and you pick up the phone and no one answers, and you say hello, and then the next thing you say is yes, and then you say, can you hear me? And then they build up enough that they can now clone your voice. The other place they get it, and this is going to hit home for a lot of people, especially if you use social media a lot, is your Facebook, your TikTok, and your Instagram accounts. Because when you or the realtor or anybody else is going on Instagram and posting all these videos, all they have to do is screen record one of those videos, and they have enough of your voice that they can create an AI voice clone. So I knew hundreds of realtors when I was in business, and if they AI voice cloned one and I called them or they called me and said, hey, I just sent you an email with some wiring instructions. I just didn't want you to think it was fake. And it sounds just like them. If you don't believe me, I'm not going to play this since the videos were stuttering, but this is another CBS News report from last year. Actually, they interview a mother who got a phone call at night, and their child was in a very hurried voice saying that they were in trouble and they needed some money. And the mother panicked and sent the money, and it was not her child. So, and apparently what had happened is the scammer got the child's voice off of the child's social media account. And so when you get to the point where a parent cannot tell that they're actually talking to their child, that's pretty convincing. One other one, this next one,
Phone scam.
we created. Okay, so that picture's fake. it was actually a picture of me and another Louisiana politician. But we did create an endorsement for me from the president.
Chris Baker, terrific guy, really terrific. I've known him, and people are always telling me, sir, Chris is doing an unbelievable job, and they're right. What he's doing in Louisiana and Arkansas, it's incredible, really incredible work. Everybody sees it. The results are strong, very strong, and people respect that.
So I thank the president for that endorsement, but that was 100% fake and was created with someone typing that into a sample of Trump's voice from a speech. So if that doesn't scare you enough and you think, well, all that stuff can happen, but has it really happened in our industry? And the answer is yes, it has. We're going to look at some examples recently, how all of this stuff has been utilized in real estate to try and defraud people. The first one, it was a deepfake video conference. RUP Engineering is a engineering firm that has been around forever and ever, and designed the Sydney Opera House. They have an office in Hong Kong, and an employee received an email asking him to send some money via wire to different locations. Like a good employee, he wanted to verify that. So he set up a video they set up a video conference, and he joined, and he saw these corporate officers and people that he knew. The only problem was everybody in that video was fake except him. And they had taken everyone's likeness from the corporate website and created a video with all of these people in it, directing him to make the wire transfers, which he did. And they did not discover that until someone had actually called to verify that they had actually sent that money from that office. The story didn't say whether they got the money back, so it kind of makes me think that maybe they didn't. Florida, this was an actual title company in Hollandale Beach, Florida, and this was last year. They had a lady that was trying to sell her vacation home, only it was not that lady. They got suspicious because the tax roll did not have an address. The lady said she was from West Virginia, but the tax rolls had an overseas address on them. So they asked for video confirmation. They did a video call. At some point in the video call, it glitched. So it made the title agent nervous, and the title agent asked her to perform a function which she could not do, and they realized that it was a video loop of a person who did not exist. So they were able to catch that and shut that down. This, of course, is just a news story on that, but I'm not going to go through and play that for time constraints, and because we're getting the glitching that we're getting right now for that. This was another case in 2024, deep fake fraud in a RON closing. So the RON was actually defeated through that AI generated documents and AI generated face swap technology, which we talked about earlier. So the seller, they generated the fake documents through AI, they passed verification, and then they used face swap technology to appear as the seller, and it actually worked. So this is happening, and that was 2024. So if it could do it in 2024, it is much, much harder to detect it now than it was then. This one is more of a business email compromise situation. The main point here is that an attorney's email was hacked, and the Connecticut home buyer received an email from the attorney to send them the $426,000 to close on their house. They send the wire to where they thought it was supposed to go, and it went to the fraudster's bank account. Fortunately, they figured it out in time. They called the FBI, and the FBI Internet Crimes Division was able to freeze the money and get almost all of it back. And so what that does is that highlights the fact that if you think that you've been a victim of this, or you think someone else has, one of your clients, one of your buyers or sellers, they need to act as quickly as they can You need to have, and no one really wants this information to get out, but the banks need to be contacted immediately. We need to be contacted and told about it. And then also, you need to think about contacting the FBI, which you can do through their portal and report it. Deed and title theft, this is more what you see with the title lock situation, but as it's, and everybody's heard the commercials for that. What makes this harder now is electronic recording of documents and AI scraping. So they go through and they scrape the records, they scrape the social media, and they create these documents through AI, and they send them for electronic recording, either through accomplices or through publicly available electronic recording platforms where that's available, or they create fraudulent accounts with information that they have scraped from government websites and pose as notaries or attorneys, create accounts under those attorneys and notaries' names, and record the documents that way. Always record your documents and mortgages quickly. And if anything looks off on your title search, make sure you say something about it. We've been over most of these already, but these are just some things you can do. Only get your payoffs from verified places. Always call from an independently sourced number. Never change wiring instructions. And if you do, please make absolutely sure that you have verified this with the appropriate person, with a callback to an independently verified number. For remote sellers, never, ever, ever let them pick the notary. You pick the notary. And if you need help picking the notary, we can help you set up a notary. But never, never let them pick the notary. If something feels off, it probably is. Like to say, add friction. Ask them to do something out of the ordinary. The minute you start becoming difficult, they'll probably sign off and go find somebody who's not as difficult as you are. It's better to make somebody angry than it is to be a victim of this stuff. Rhino Verify. Rhino will do your reconciliations, and we've been kind of touting them for a long time. But they will also verify your wires. They have a service that verifies your wires. If you want to know more about that, you can contact your security title representative, state counsel, state manager, and they can talk to you a little bit more about how to use that with the reconciliations and the wire verification service that comes with that. We're getting to the point where it's going to be harder and harder for us to catch this stuff using the old-fashioned way, so you're going to need some kind of technology on your side to do that. Big one that we just started offering is IntelliCheck. IntelliCheck is a service that is used by government agencies, it's used by law enforcement, it's used by financial institutions. You can copy someone's identification, you can upload that, and it will tell you whether or not that ID is real, and the information on it matches what you are looking for, so that you can be certain that you are dealing with the correct individual. That is something that we have started offering. And that's another thing. If you can get in touch with your state, if you're interested in that, please get in touch with your state manager or your state council, and we can try to help you get set up for that and maybe come in and demo it for you. Again, this slide, and you'll see it, I'm not endorsing any of these things, but other than IntelliCheck and Rhino, these are just some things that you can use to try to combat that. One of the things I told you that I would give you is the FBI website down there, the ic3.gov. That is where you're going to report this if it, God forbid, it ever happens to the RAT team. I just always enjoy calling a government agency a RAT, but it's a recovery asset team, and hopefully they can help you get some of your money back. But these things might be worth looking into for you as well. I'm going to try to play one last video because we only got about 5 minutes left. I apologize if it glitches out and some of the sound is kind of like disturbing, but I want you to see this video is a video of Will Smith eating spaghetti, which has become the benchmark for the progression of AI technology. The original video was created in 2024, and it's going to take 2024, 2025, and ultimately show you what it can do in 2026 a couple of months ago. and then what it can do as of about 2 months ago. So we're going to try this last little video here.
Oh, that's hot. That's hot. Uncle Phil comes right.
2025.
I'm still eating the spaghetti in 2025.
So have you heard of Cling 3.0? I heard it can create multiple scene cuts like this with a single prompt. And it knows when to cut to whoever is talking. But did you know that all this audio was also generated with the same prompt? I guess I didn't, sir.
Study harder, kid. Eat your spaghetti.
And now.
Man, we've come a long way.
Okay, so, and that was 2 years worth. And so you can see how dangerous this stuff is going to get in a very short period of time. So that's pretty much all I've got. So hopefully I did okay with my first webinar and didn't talk too fast. I think we got about 5 minutes left. Anybody got any questions that we have in there?
We have a couple questions so far, Chris. But
we'll try to get to those. And then, of course, anybody can email me if we run out of time.
First question is, with regard to deepfake technology, does the ability to have remote online notary services mitigate that risk somewhat?
Some of them do. It depends on what service you're using. So the best thing, some of them have built-in safeguards to try and detect any kind of AI usage, and they also have some of those technologies also have built-in safeguards to check the IDs that you're using and the documents you're using to make sure they're real. So you just really need to talk to your software provider about that to see what kind of built-in protections they have. But no, there was that one case where they were using the face swap technology and actually defeated it. Now that was granted a little over a year ago.
Next question is, can you advise on what cyber insurance policy is recommended that actually covers these events?
So I really can't. And the reason is I've heard a lot about that, where there are a lot of loopholes in those policies. So you'll get them, and then what you have to prove and the deductible you have to pay. I do know that most E&O insurance does not cover a lot of this stuff. So what I would recommend you do is talk to your E&O carrier and see if there's any kind of endorsement or anything that you can add to your policy to try to cover some of this. But just make sure you ask them, what if this were to happen, what am I going to have to provide to make a claim? And how much coverage am I actually going to get? And what deductible am I actually going to pay? Don't just assume that it works just like your regular E&O insurance, because I've heard that it does not.
Okay. This seems to be more of a statement than a question. So we have been advised that employees at FedEx, USPS, UPS, etc., are opening overnight envelopes that have the sender name as a title company and for the recipient as a payoff department. So we now use a staff member name only as the sender and no mention of payoff department, and staple the opening of the envelope. Some people are using tamper-proof tape as well. So,
no, I think that's a good idea, because like what we looked at is old school fraud is alive and well. And that is a part of old school fraud, just as if you were having those, forged documents in the past and you had the notaries in on it, and they were actually notarizing the forged documents. So I do think that, I do not think that's overkill, because people will also break into those boxes.
Yeah, I guess that gets into some of the not AI fraud, but
Yeah, it's more traditional fraud with the employee theft from FedEx, but and then good luck getting FedEx to take responsibility for that.
and this is whether it's an envelope, and if there's some high value trading cards that people are creating fakes of and selling them on the different markets. People are opening the packs of cards and then resealing them. So staple seems like a good idea. Do you have any other tactics similar to that you haven't covered in the presentation?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it's ever evolving as I find out about new things going on out there. So maybe we'll have to revisit this in a yearly fashion.